One of the things that made Git so popular as a version control system is its ability to merge branches back together so seamlessly and make that a part of the workflow of every Git developer. In this lesson, we're going to talk about branching and merging in Git with an emphasis on the merging side of this because we've talked about branching in the past. As a quick refresher, branches enable us to safely explore ideas in a code base. So the thinking goes like this. If you have this workflow where if you want to try out some new idea, the practice tends to be create a branch to try that idea. Often these are called feature branches. You make commits on that branch as you're working towards it. If you need to switch back and forth between this new idea you're exploring and some other work that you needed to do, you're clear and easily able to do so. And we'll take a look at how you do that in this lecture as well. And then ultimately, if that branch you're working on, if the ideas of it are sound and you want to bring those back into what we often call the mainline branch, but in Git, this tends to be the branch whose name is master, you can merge that branch back into mainline, right? Or back into master. And that's what we're going to be focused on today. How do we make those merges so that we can bring work from different branches into a single branch? If your branch wasn't a good idea, you can also always discard it, and you've not left your project in a state that you need to now go undo the work that you did, because where your mainline branch would have been left is in the same place you were in before you went off and worked in this new branch. So we're going to talk about two mechanisms for merging. One we briefly discussed before, but we're going to recap it in just a little bit, the idea of a fast-forward merge, which isn't actually a merge at all, but we think of it as bringing two branches together sort of conceptually. And then a true merge is one that results in a new merge commit that brings two branches back together. This is a commit that has two parent nodes, so this is why it's different from a regular commit. We'll look at merge commits more explicitly here shortly. Lastly, we're going to talk about how do we merge branches that have conflicting changes. And we're going to see that typically, in many cases, Git is able to merge files together from different branches without much fanfare. But in some cases, we're going to be responsible as the software engineers who wrote the code to resolve any conflict that resulted in a merge that Git can't figure out on its own. Broadly, how this fits into a bigger picture and why you should really care about this tends to be workflows that you'll see out in industry or in research labs. Each team is going to have its own unique workflow for organizing repositories, and part of this workflow will be rules about when and why should you establish a branch. And most organizations have adopted a standard that is, because it's so easy to set up a new branch in Git and work within it safely, the default is always just, if you want to try something out, go make a branch, go play around, no problem. Where things get to be a little bit more stringent are when can you merge a branch back into the mainline branch or to master, right? And so often this would be based around, are you passing your tests? Have you fixed any conflicts? Things like that. We'll see that once we learn a little bit more about fast forwarding, some teams prefer to choose a model where you always merge via fast forwarding, and you have to jump through some hoops to do that. Or some teams prefer to never use fast forwarding, and we'll talk about that as well. How do you release a version of a project, and how do you catch up some branch or your own repository when others in your organization have been making progress beyond where your repository is currently at? Most of the time, these rules have a lot of heavy interplay with other tooling that is involved in a workflow, such as unit testing, right? If your project is passing all unit tests, then you should be able to merge your work back in. Some organizations have required code reviews. Google is one, for example, where before you can merge your work back into the mainline of your project, someone or two other people on your team have to do a code review. And in Google, when someone does a code review, they look over your code and either they give you some feedback that you need to fix before they're able to sign off, or they give an LGTM is what they call it. And that's a looks good to me, which is the green light to go ahead and merge your work in. And again, today we're focused mostly just on merging and in a pretty simple sense. But if you're interested in how do teams actually navigate this in the real world, one of the most influential pieces of writing I think that is on the internet and freely available is this a successful Git branching model that is linked at the bottom of today's slide. All right, so in these next videos, we're going to clone a repository that has a few branches set up in it and explore how do we merge those back together and create our own branches and get some practice with this type of a workflow.